Chapter 28. Ron and Hermione. Chapter 28. Ron and Hermione, August 21 now, that Voldemort was officially out of his head. Harry found himself wanting desperately to write to Ron and Hermione. He pulled out the notes he'd started before from his desk drawer and read over them. A lot had changed since he'd started them, so he crumpled them up and grabbed some fresh parchment. He sighed. He couldn't just tell them about the soul piece. If he was going to write them, he may as well spill the beans on the other crazy goings-on from the summer. Ideally, he'd rather talk to them in person, but kind of wanted to give them some warning. He didn't want to think about Ron's reaction if he saw Harry acting buddy-buddy with Draco on the train without any explanation. He sat at his desk and worked for a while on the two letters. He read through them once he was done and grimaced a bit at how much more careful with his words he was being in his note to Ron. It's not that he didn't trust his red-headed friend, but Harry also knew that Hermione was much more adaptable and understanding, and this showed in the letter to her. Dear Hermione, a lot has happened since we last spoke, but first and foremost, I want you to know that I'm doing really well, and believe it or not, this has turned out to be the best summer I can remember. It didn't start out that way, but things have changed a lot, Professor. Dumbledore has finally given me permission to tell you who I'm living with, so here goes. I've been living with Professor Snape at his ancestral home, Prince Manor. And that's not all. Draco Malfoy has been living with us since his parents died, and he doesn't have anywhere else to go. Turns out Professor Snape is his godfather. Doesn't that explain a lot? It was rough at first. They were both awful that first week, even worse than usual. But then things changed. Professor Snape went a little too far and then apologized, and since then, things have gradually gotten better between us. Draco, too. He was a right prat at the beginning, but I think first out of boredom he kept coming to annoy me, but then we got to talking, and he's gotten better. He's not as hopeless as his father, it seems. For example, would you believe that I convinced him to read The Lord of the Rings, and he finished the Fellowship already, is working on The Two Towers, and is going on about how it's one of his favorite book series of all time. He adores it, even knowing it was written by a muggle. He's even asked me for more recommendations once he finishes this, and I told him I'd need to ask you, would you mind sharing some of your favorite books? Speaking of Draco, he actually has been helpful here and there. We've had a lot of spare time, so he's been teaching me ancient runes, and I'll tell you, I really wish I'd chosen that subject, and I'm honestly considering asking Professor Snape if I can switch divination for it starting this year. Severus told me my mum was great at languages in general and loved runes, so I admit that's part of it. Oh yeah, did I mention Snape was childhood friends with my mum? That's a whole other story. You'd be pretty proud of how studious I've been in general here. I'm actually okay at potions now, and same thing with occlumency. The professor taught me properly this time, and it wasn't actually that bad. Oh, and he found out about Umbridge and the whole blood quill thing, and boy was he upset. You should have seen him. Anyway, the scar on my hand's all gone. And the professor even thinks he has enough evidence to convict her. Did you know a blood quill is considered a mild form of the imperious curse? The biggest thing that happened this summer, though, came after I did something reckless. I know. And Voldemort captured Mebut, then Professor Snape came to save me. Since then, he's been really great, and even figured out a way to get Voldemort's soul piece out of me. Apparently, Professor Dumbledore thought I'd have to die if we ever wanted to kill Voldemort. It really sucks to think about, but that was apparently his plan all along, having me walk to my death. But anyway, Professor Snape wasn't having it. He did tons of research in all of these books about the dark arts until he figured out a way to get it out of me. So no more chosen one sacrificing himself in my future. Oh, and guess what? I can still talk to snakes even after the soul piece was removed. That was apparently not from Voldemort, which is weird to think about, but it might actually be a hereditary thing from somewhere way back. You probably know this, but literally every pureblood family is related to one another. Sorry to dump all of this on you, I know it's a lot, but a lot has happened. Miss you tons and can't wait to see you first of the year. Love, Harry with Hermione. The words had just flowed out, and the letter felt really natural. He took a deep breath and read through the very different note he'd penned to Ron. Hi, Ron. Boy, do I have a lot to tell you. This summer has been insane. First off, I have some great news. You know all that nonsense about my being the chosen one and having to fight Voldemort? Well, apparently it was partly because, when Voldemort tried to kill me, he left a little piece of himself in me. I know, it's awful, but anyway, long story short, it's not there anymore. Which means I don't have to be the one to kill him anymore, and he doesn't have to kill me for him to die. Apparently, that was Professor Dumbledore's plan all along. It's all bollocks, but it's behind us is the important thing. You probably won't believe it, but it was Professor Snape who figured out how to remove it and destroy it. And yeah, he actually did it. It's gone, so that's a big relief. Speaking of Snapiso, yeah, Professor Dumbledore said I can tell you guys where I've been living, and it's actually with Professor Snape and his godson who happens to be Draco Malfoy. Explains a lot, that. I know what you're thinking, and yeah, it was pretty bad at first. But things have changed, and they've both been all right recently, more than, to be honest. Malfoy's an annoying prat, but it turns out he's not evil. He never wanted to become a Death Eater, and once you get to know him, he's not really too bad. And Severus Iswell, he's a complicated guy and will probably never be nice exactly, but he's been good to me. I did a reckless thing and got captured by Voldemort, and it was the professor who came to save me. And did you know he was friends with my mum as kids? Insane, huh? And he's planning on trying to get Umbridge locked away for forcing me to use the blood quill. Anyway, I'm rambling now. Point is, it's been crazy, it's been rough, but I'm actually doing fine now. I'm actually enjoying myself, and it's turning out to be one of the better summers I've had. Give my love to your family. Can't wait to see you in a couple of weeks. Harry, it was hard to say how Ron would take his letter. He tried to be careful with how he shared the summer's goings-on with him. Hopefully it would be enough. Harry passed the letters to Severus, who nodded, saying he'd have the headmaster see to it they were delivered promptly. August 22, the next morning, Severus placed his owl post in front of him. There was only one letter in Hermione's handwriting. He wasn't really surprised that Ron was giving him the silent treatment, or maybe that was reading too much into it. It had only been a day after all. Harry sighed, definitely expected Ron to be less than understanding about Harry's change of heart towards the Slytherins, but Harry had offered a lot of explanation. The thought that Ron was probably struggling with it anyway made Harry's heart drop despite himself, along with unbidden, a flash of annoyance. Ron just didn't understand what he had been through. Why couldn't he have been happy for him that he was doing okay and having a better summer than usual, no matter the source of that happiness? After all, Ron had been aware of Harry's situation with the Dursleys from the beginning. It's not like it was a big secret how Harry had never had a good summer or home life. Letters from Granger and the Weasel. Piss off. Potter. Harry's flare of annoyance dissipated, and he was left with a disappointed Severus giving him the look. Sorry about that, sir. Let this time be a warning. Next time you use such language at the dinner table, I shall not be as lenient. I understand, sir. Sorry about that. What's eating you? Draco asked him as he walked back to his room after the meal. You know, I don't like those friends of yours, but I was just messing with you. It's just he wrote them about what all's been going on here, and of course, only heard back from Hermione. Which is to be expected, but it's still disappointing. Harry felt a twinge of guilt, confiding in Draco about this. Yeah, Weasley does not strike me as one to be understanding of liking Slytherins. But you think Granger wouldn't mind? Hermione doesn't have the ingrained hatred from her family, for one thing, and she's always been more mature and had more perspective than Ron. She's also not hot-headed. So yeah, I haven't read her response yet. Harry waved the letter. But I expect she'll be supportive of whatever as long as I'm doing okay. Draco nodded. Don't tell her I said this, but Granger's not actually so bad. I know I give her a hard time, but she's always been the least hopeless of the Gryffindors." Harry smacked the Bland over the head at that, and Draco grinned at him. "There, you broke a smile. Anyway, Harry, I'm sure Weasley will come around. He's just the stubborn, not as erudite type." Harry rolled his eyes. "Thanks for trying to cheer me up, I guess." When Harry got back to his room, he pulled out Hermione's response and began to read. "Dear Harry, thank you so much for your message and for sharing all of this with me. It certainly seems to have been quite the summer, and while some of what you shared, in truth, a lot of what you shared, is a little hard to believe, Draco Malfoy, reading Muggle novels and wanting to read more. The important thing is that you seem happy, and that means everything. You have been through so much, and in truth, I fear Ron and I only know the tip of the iceberg as far as how things were for you before you came to Hogwarts, but, that is to say, if anyone deserves a good summer for once, and more people in their corner, it's you, Harry. I am happy for you. But Harry, what you said about Professor Dumbledore is absolutely awful. I am sure you would not be saying what you did unless you had real reason to believe it, and, honestly, I'm not sure how to feel, but betrayed, and yes, angry for you. Why couldn't he have used all of his resources? After all, he has the entire wizarding world at his disposal to have found a different solution. After all, Professor Snape apparently did so in a very short amount of time. The only explanation I can see is that he simply didn't feel motivated to examine those possibilities, or else he was too confident in his reading of the situation. As much as I have loved and respected the headmaster, I'm just not sure what to think anymore. Certainly, I think I will give what he says a little more analysis than I may have in the past, but Harry, there truly was a piece of that madman's soul in you all this time. How horrifying, and how incredible that it's gone now. Are you okay? What sort of ritual was it to extract it? Was it terribly painful? Of course, if you would rather not talk about it, I understand. On a completely different topic, of course, I would be happy to recommend some books. I'm of course not sure what old Draco would be interested in. How strange. I thought of him as Draco just now. I guess the person you've described to me in your letter is so different from my image of Malfoy that it seemed natural to call him something else. But in any case, since I'm not sure what his preferences are, here are a few classics of different genres he could try that I personally love. You can get them through Owl Order easily enough. Shogun by James Clavell. It's long but so engaging. 1984 by George Orwell. Thought-provoking and not the hardest read. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. The Three Musketeers. Jane Eyre. Has he read Shakespeare? If not, tell him to pick up Hamlet, King Lear, Othello, any of them, really, that is to say all of them. Oh, do you think Draco would like me to send him some recommendations directly? If so, I'm perfectly happy to. I haven't honestly found anyone in Gryffindor who can match my love of reading, so it really is nice to hear that someone else has the bookworm bug. Oh, and Harry, I am so pleased to hear about your interest in ancient runes. Runes is such a fascinating subject, and ever so much better than divination, at least the way it is taught at Hogwarts. There is real substance to it. I can't wait to discuss it with you. Do you think Professor Snape could help you change your schedule around? It would be great if we could be in class together, though I know you're a few years behind, so perhaps that's asking a lot. Can't wait to see you, but in the meantime, right back. Love, Hermione, good old Hermione. Harry laughed and actually shared part of her letter with Draco, since the second half was mostly addressed to him. The look on the Bland's face made Harry laugh out loud. She's such a nerd, he burst into laughter. But she's not terrible, I suppose. She also gets points for being displeased with Dumbledore. At the look Harry shot him, Draco made a face and waved his hands frantically. Perish the thought. I never have and never will see Granger that way. But I suppose she could make an acceptable pen pal of sorts, I suppose. Only in those areas where she could be useful as a boredom deterrent, that is. Harry shook his head in faux exasperation. But inside, he was thrilled that the Bland could look past his prejudice to say something nice about Hermione Granger. August 23, the next day he did get a response from Ron, and it couldn't have been more different from Hermione's letter. "Hey, Harry, good to hear from you, and glad you're safe. Sounds like it's been pretty rough going. It's absolutely insane that Professor Dumbledore put you with Snape and Malfoy. Did someone put him up to that? You said they were rotten as ever at first. That's sure no surprise. But you also say they got better after that. I don't know, Harry. I would not trust them. It might be hard for you, since it seems they are already trying to brainwash you, but don't forget everything we've been through with them. They're bad news, and I don't believe for a second that they've changed. You say Snape rescued you. For all you know, he set the whole thing up just to get on your good side. And did you call him Severus? Harry blinked, distracted for a second. Had he written the professor's first name in his note to Ron? Harry had to admit he was thinking of that man in those terms from time to time. Probably because Draco always called him that, and he was being so much more decent he sighed, and reluctantly continued to read Ron's letter. And I don't know what you're playing at acting like Malfoy's, anything other than an evil git. Okay, so maybe he doesn't want to follow in Daddy Dearest's footsteps exactly, but he's always been a right coward, so that's probably all that is. You can probably tell I'm pissed, and yeah, I guess I am, because from your letter you're acting like Dumbledore's, the one who had it in for you, while the slimy git and evil Pratt are the good guys. Do you know how bonkers that sounds? Can't you like hide in your room and ignore them or something? Are they forcing you to interact with them? Good thing summer is almost over, so soon we can forget these things happened, and you won't have to pretend to like the gits anymore. But in the meantime, I'm going to get Mum or Dad to talk to Professor Dumbledore and see if we can get you to come stay here for the rest of the summer. Even a week away from them's better than nothing. By the end of Ron's letter, Harry was steaming mad. While he understood Ron's concerns, given that they'd had exactly 0 positive interactions with either Slytherin prior to this summer. On the other hand, couldn't he trust that Harry knew what the hell he was talking about? It was super patronizing, and Harry really didn't appreciate Ron's stubborn one-track mind when Harry was telling him he'd actually been happy this summer. He even suggested Harry lock himself in his room, as if Harry would want to do that given he'd been locked in his room every summer up to now, and just to make a point about being anti-Slytherin. It was asinine, he thought, intentionally channeling the potion's master. The letter didn't have one word about how Harry finally was rid of that soul piece either. It was just Slytherin hate. Ugh. He shut the letter up in his desk drawer and tried not to think about it. He certainly wasn't going to respond to Ron's message anytime soon. Then Harry had a dark thought. What if he'd been put in Slytherin back in first year? Would Ron have rejected him immediately? He probably would have, Harry realized with some sadness. Harry probably would have gone through the years with Draco as his best friend. He pulled the letter out again and looked at it, trying to be objective. Harry understood that Ron probably thought he was looking out for Harry, but he was just being a total prat about it. How many times had they fought in the past? Ron always came around eventually, once he'd had a chance to cool down. But this had the potential to make the start of school a real pain. Harry, another letter for you. Severus had an eyebrow arched, standing in the doorway to Harry's room. Some teenage drama. Harry ripped open the letter from Hermione and read it right there. Harry just got a message from Ron. He is taking this all the wrong way, as usual. But please don't let him get to you. You know how he is. Just take care of yourself and give him time. I'll try to work on him on my end. Say hello to Professor Snape for me. Love, Hermione. Harry smiled. He really appreciated Hermione's level-headedness. He was fortunate to have such a loyal friend. Well, Harry looked up, forgetting Severus was still standing there. It's just Ron's being a prat. Not too surprising. Hermione told me to not worry about him, that she'll do what she can to cool him down, and for me to not let it distract me. Severus nodded. Miss Granger's assessment of how to proceed is correct. For what it's worth, I do think she qualifies as an acceptable friend for you. Harry grinned mischievously. Oh, she wanted me to pass along a greeting to you. Severus arched an eyebrow at that. Is that so? A long silence. I suppose you may pass along the same next time you write, assuming she continues to be a positive influence and not the opposite. Harry grinned. Sure thing, Professor. Thanks. The wizard nodded and spun on his heel, his robes whipping around him with flair. How does he manage to do it so well each time? Draco's voice sounded from behind him. I think it's the timing of the final flick that makes the difference. The blonde Slytherin attempted the Snape pivot, but his robes whipped around him with much less aplomb. Harry shook his head and Draco pouted. What can I say? Harry shrugged. You don't have the touch. Draco smacked Harry over the head with a letter before stuffing it into his hands. Harry looked at Draco curiously, and the blonde looked a little uncomfortable. It's for Granger. Can you send this on with your next note to her? Harry blinked and decided not to make a big deal as that would probably set things back. Sure thing, he said easily, shrugging. Draco shot him a suspicious look, but then changed the subject. Oi, lazybones, let's get back to runes. If you want to have any chance of testing into our class, you have a long way to go. I haven't even talked to Professor Snape about it yet. It might not even be possible. Talk to him tonight. Professor, Harry broached over dinner. Yes, Mr. Potter. The man looked up to meet his eyes. Harry looked back at Draco, who nodded encouragingly. Do you think, that is to say, is there any way I could change my class schedule for next year? And of what, specifically, do you speak? Well, it's just he realized that I never should have chosen divination and would really like to switch to ancient runes. I don't know if it's possible. Severus gave him a long, hard look before responding. Normally, I would agree with the notion of the impossibility of such a request. As it is, however, the request you make is not without sense. I shall talk with Albus. But Harry, the potions master said seriously, you would either be put in a class of younger students, he held up a hand when the boy started to protest, or you would need to test into your runes class of choice. As you know, Year 1 Ancient Runes is for third-year students. That means to be able to join your yearmates in class, you would need to test out of 3 years of the subject. That is no mean feat, Harry nodded. I know it's not going to be easy, but I've done a lot of reading, and Draco has explained so much. Is there any way I could try to test out of the first few years? I think I can do it. Severus sighed, but was not unsupportive of the boy's request. I will speak with the headmaster. Thank you, sir. Severus nodded, and it was clear that was all they were going to discuss on the topic. Draco gave Harry a surreptitious thumbs up under the table, and Harry grinned. The prospect of never going back into that divination room was an incredible relief. Just needed to prove he knew enough about ancient runes to join Draco. Yet another challenge, but one he didn't really mind. Thanks, as always, for reading. Chapter 29, Summer's End. Chapter 29, Summer's End. Hermione, I spoke with Professor Snape, and he got approval from Professors Dumbledore and Babbling. I'm going to take a test in 2 days, gulp, to see if I can test out of at least entry-level runes. I really want to join you and Draco in class, but I also realize I'm out of time before school starts, so whatever I've learned is what I have to work with. Wish me luck. It just hit Harry that Ron might not appreciate his leaving him in divination alone. He could just hear him. How could you, Harry, you traitor? Leaving me in that attic with that crazy woman alone, right on the heels of the Severus and Draco Revel drama never ended. Harry was sleepy the morning of his exam, as he and Draco had stayed up cramming until Severus had barked at them. Sleep, for Merlin's sake. Draco passed him a light stimulant potion. It's just like that muggle drink. Coffee is it? Anyway, not cheating at all. Just call it a tad bit of Slytherin cunning. Thinking how Hermione would totally disapprove, Harry nevertheless took it and had to admit when he sat down to take the test, he was able to bring everything to mind right away. Whether it was due to the magical caffeine shot he'd had or not, he wasn't sure. All in all, Harry felt he'd done as well as possible on the test, given the limited time and exposure he'd had to the subject. He got his results the same day. Severus passed them over at the dinner table, and he opened the envelope with bated breath. Okay, this was okay. He hadn't quite tested into fourth-year rooms, the class his yearmates would be in, but he was accepted into third year with a caveat that he could move to fourth year if he did supplemental studying and took another test at a later date. He could take this test as early as the end of the first term. That gave him from now until the end of first term to get up to speed with his yearmates if he wanted to move to their class for the spring term. He shared the results with the two Slytherins who were waiting semi-patiently. Alas, despite my excellent tutoring, it seems it wasn't enough for that dunder-headed Gryffindor brain. Are you sure your tutoring just wasn't up to snuff, Draco? Draco made a rude gesture, which got him a look from his godfather. Well done, Harry. Harry blinked in surprise. It wasn't often that Severus Snape would offer a simple, straightforward compliment. The man's acknowledgement meant a lot. Thank you, sir. Harry beamed at him. The potions master cleared his throat. Now that we have the question of Mr. Potter's rune class settled, it would behoove you both to go ahead and purchase your supplies and textbooks for next year. You only have a week of summer left, after all, Draco groaned. Where did the time go? You obviously whiled it away somehow or another. Severus continued more seriously. As you are both aware, we will not be taking a trip to Diagon Alley this year. It is too risky with the Dark Lord targeting both of you. The boys both nodded morosely. After tea that night, Harry and Draco spent some time looking through school catalogues together until they'd pretty much landed on what they wanted. This is so much less fun, groaned Draco. Tell me about it. I can't wait until Uncle Severus takes out the Dark Lord and all this secrecy and extra caution can go rot. Ditto. Harry, Draco's voice was suddenly uncharacteristically unsure. Yeah, what's it going to be like when we go back to school? Are we enemies again? No, Harry decided. No, I don't think so. We should be exactly as we are and give them all a scare. Draco laughed. I'm not sure if that line of thinking is Slytherin or Gryffindor. It's devious to be sure, but in an in-your-face sort of way. Well, don't forget I was almost a Slytherin. Ah yes, perish the thought of you dumbing down my living quarters. Draco gave a fake shiver. Harry rolled his eyes. Good night, Draco. Good night, the blonde responded imperiously. As he left Draco's room, Harry looked back and grinned as he glimpsed Draco making for his stack of books, some of them recommendations from Hermione. The next few days were a blur of activity. There were only 7 days left of the summer. Severus was in and out, splitting his time between Hogwarts for order strategy meetings and home. While home, the three wizards spent a lot of time in the potions lab as they were extremely close to finishing the anti-dark mark potion. 5 days before the end of summer break, they managed it. Yes, Draco let out a childlike yell of glee when Severus pronounced it more than good enough. In truth, it had been pretty much there for a while. Ever since Severus had rescued Harry from Voldemort, there had been a constant pain in the dark mark that was thankfully only perceptible outside of the manor's powerful and specialized dark magic wards. But any time Severus left, the pain reared its head again. However, applying Draco's potion had kept the pain to a more than manageable level. This latest formulation Severus tested by apparating out, and upon his return reported there had been no pain at all. He had confirmed earlier that even when the Death Eaters were being called, that it would mask the pain. This was essential. If Death Eaters could ignore Voldemort's call with this potion, it gave them a way out if they so chose to take it. Now finished, they brainstormed for a while on a name, eventually deciding on Silentium Signum, meaning silencing the mark. Severus wasted no time in spreading the word once it was done. He did so through established and extremely difficult-to-trace channels, posing as an anonymous former Death Eater. He offered samples at no cost or commitment, along with some tips, easily confirmable, regarding the Dark Lord's less than pure blood lineage. He had planted a seed, and that was sufficient for now. They would monitor the situation, see what the fallout would be. The last few days of summer, Harry found himself a jumble of emotions. On the one hand, he felt uncertain about what it would be like to return to school after everything that had happened. Sure, he and the professor had a very different relationship, but that was here, at the haven of Prince Manor. Would this peace persist when they returned to the castle? Or would old habits win out, with them falling back into the mutual animosity that had defined their relationship since day one in the dark dungeon classroom? Other than Harry's anxieties, these last days were also remarkably peaceful. Now that most of the challenges of the summer were over, the Horcrux, the potion, occlumency, and even the runes test, Harry and Draco had nothing to do but relax and enjoy themselves. It felt like the calm before the storm. He took his time walking the grounds and manor, simply taking it in at leisure, as he hadn't truly done before trying to appreciate this place for what it had come to mean to him. How strange that he could feel such affection for a place where he'd started out so miserable, but so was the case with the two Slytherins. They had been through a lot together in a short span of time. From enmity to neutrality to friendship and, if Harry were honest with himself, it was beginning to feel like more than that. Maybe it was the anticipation about the start of school, but one night Harry forgot to employ his occlumency shields before bed. They had clearly been tremendously effective, as the frequency of Harry's nightmares had dwindled to almost nothing as of late. But this night, he dreamed. He was riding silently across the lake in a little boat, a faceless fellow student sharing the boat with him. He looked up in awe at the massive castle. He was a first year on his way to Hogwarts for the first time. The school loomed up ahead, taking up his entire line of vision. It was so impressive it was almost terrifying that night. A chill went through him. Now Harry was in the dungeon, in Professor Snape's potions classroom. The room felt darker than usual and the air thick. He looked at his hands, noticing they were small and uncalloused. Was he 16? Was he 11? Suddenly the door slammed open. Harry looked up and jumped to see Severus Snape right there in front of him, scowling down at him with abject hatred. "James Potter," the tall wizard hissed. Harry tried to explain he wasn't James, but a moment later he found his body moving on its own, sneering back and suddenly standing tall, no longer 11 years old, but tall as a grown man. "Snivelous, still as slimy as always. I see." The sneering words came from his mouth. He couldn't stop them. The potions master's eyes turned rabid, and the next thing Harry knew he was little again, and was himself, and was being dragged roughly by his upper arm over to the potion storeroom. The potions master threw Harry into the room. Harry looked back to see the man standing there in the doorway was Vernon Dursley. "Stay there, freak, and don't pretend to be part of our family again." The door slammed shut, and suddenly Harry was back in his cupboard, the room small, dark, and dirty. He was so cold. He clung to his thin, ratty blanket like a lifeline. Then he heard laughter. He scooted forward to peek through the shutters of the cupboard door. On the other side, he saw Severus and Draco sitting at the dining room table at Prince Manor, laughing, appearing to be having a great time. "Good thing we're rid of Potter," the Blarn said. "Indeed, the boy is a waste of space. I too am pleased to no longer be forced to house the brat. To think he actually thought we were friends. Touche, the boy who nobody wanted," the potions master smirked meanly. "The stupid child thought he was one of us when in fact he's just a freak, destined to be alone." "No, you can't mean it. We are friends. I'm not a F-freak," Harry tried weakly. Harry felt himself shrinking. He was no longer 16 or even 11 as he had been a few minutes prior. He was 4, and he wanted his mummy, but knew by now she wasn't coming still. He tried calling out to her, but not too loudly. Silent tears dripped down his cheeks. Uncle Vernon didn't like when he cried too loud. He let out a little whimper anyway at the overwhelming feeling of loneliness and hopeless filling his chest. He curled up on himself, starting to shake. Then suddenly there was a loud bang, and Harry peeked up to see the door had been ripped from its hinges, light flooding the space. An instant later, strong arms wrapped around Harry, and he felt himself getting pulled up off of the cold ground and into a warm, solid embrace. He knew he was getting the nice person wet with his tears, but Harry couldn't help it. The feeling of strong hands rubbing his back comfortingly and the quiet refrain of SHH, "It's okay," was something Harry never wanted to stop. "Harry," the voice said. It was a familiar voice. "Harry, can you hear me? I'm here now. I'm here with you." Harry's breath regulated a little bit. He could hardly believe what he was hearing and feeling. When he finally got up the nerve, he looked to see the man holding him was Severus Snape, a very concerned expression on his face. "Yes, sir. But you said I was a waste of space and a F-freak," Severus growled. "That was not me." "Look, Harry." Severus gently set Harry down and bid him stay where he was. The tall, dark wizard stepped up to the pair at the table, and they instantly transformed into a beautiful woman with long red hair. Harry gasped. It was his mum, but she had the most awful expression on her face. She sneered at Severus and spat at him. "Get out of my sight, Death Eater," she hissed. "How could I ever have been friendly with the likes of you? You are pure evil, Snivelus." Harry was wrenched from his own fear by a desire to help his potions master and mentor. "No, Mum, that's not true. Severus is a good person." For some reason, the witch then turned to him and gave him an awful sneer. She opened her mouth and ridiculize. Harry heard Severus bellow the word. A moment later the boggart, for that was what it was, became a strange-looking thing with hair down to the floor on all sides. Harry was reminded of the Addams family's cousin It. The thing tripped on its long hair, and Harry laughed despite himself. A moment later, Severus had disposed of the monster. They were alone, and Harry found he was still little. "Pete, Professor," he whispered. "Is it gone?" The tall wizard bent down and scooped Harry up in his arms again. "Yes, Harry. You came for me." "I did. I thought no one was ever going to come. You and Draco were saying you didn't want me, and that I was a freak, and I observed a good bit of this dream before I was able to break through to you," the man said softly. "So yes, I know what those phantoms said." Harry sniffed. "Harry, it isn't true." "None of what that boggart said was true, do you understand?" Harry shrugged. "Listen to me, child. You are not a waste of space. You are not a burden. You are not destined to be alone." Harry looked into his professor's fathomless black eyes and wanted so badly to believe him. "But I understand it's hard. You've been betrayed so badly for so long by those who should have cared for you. But I will not betray you. I will always be on your side." Slowly, Harry felt himself growing until he was back in his 16-year-old body. "Severus?" Harry asked, then blushed at the realization the professor was still holding him in his arms. Hurriedly, he was set down. "Yes, Harry. Are you ready to leave this place?" Harry nodded, and Severus took his shoulder, giving him a gentle mental tug. A moment later, Harry was back in his bed in the manor. "What happened?" "You had become trapped in your nightmare. I heard sounds of distress and legitimized you to enter your dream as well. You were in so deep that seemed the safest method to retrieve you beyond simply letting the dream run its course." "Thank you," Harry blushed. "So that was just a boggart, huh? They are horrible creatures." "There is no shame in fearing them, just as there is no shame in fearing what the Dementors bring, fear itself." Harry found himself playing with the comforter, staring at a piece of loose fabric as if it were fascinating. "Harry," Severus said seriously. "Do you mind?" He indicated the bed, and at Harry's headshake took a seat on the edge of the bed. "Your dream was quite telling. It showed me that you still have some doubts and concerns about your place here." Harry shrugged. "It was just a dream. Dreams are rarely just anything." "There was truth to the fear you expressed and experienced there." Harry gulped. "I apologize for invading your privacy once again, but given that I had the opportunity to get a glimpse of what was bothering you, please allow me to say that you are not a waste of space. You are not a freak. You are not a burden, and I am certainly in no rush to get you out of my home." Severus paused. "You have been, in fact, a superb houseguest, and I find your company to be quite pleasant indeed." He looked at Harry seriously. "Perhaps you fear that things will go back to the way they were once we return to Hogwarts, but I assure you that is not the case. I have seen who you are, Harry Potter, and as such, I promise to never again forget who you are." Harry finally looked up and met his gaze. He believed him. "Thank you, Professor. Harry," The man looked a little uncomfortable. If you wish, you may, only in private, mind you, refer to me as Severus as Draco does. Of course, you may continue to call me Professor if that is more comfortable to you. Harry felt a little bubble of joy in his chest at that. Being given permission to use the man's given name was a big deal. All right then, S. Severus. The man nodded curtly. Tomorrow morning, let us resume occlumency. Clearly the need has not yet passed. Plan on weekly sessions at Hogwarts as well, until I am confident your strongest nightmares are behind you. After that night, Harry's anxieties about the return to school were greatly relieved. Those final 3 days were wonderful. Harry spent time in the kitchens, even roping Draco into participating, minimally, in baking some lemon tarts with the elves. They flew and had mid-afternoon tea at Thetch yonder. The Sakura tree's breakfast and dinner conversation was lively and often full of laughter. And Severus revealed to them that he was already seeing some interest in his potion. It is by now common knowledge that I am a traitor and spy amongst the Death Eaters and pureblood families. As such, I have been contacted directly by a few who are supportive of our cause, looking for a way out of servitude to the Dark Lord. Who, for example? You shall learn soon enough, Severus said with a wry smile, but at Draco's pout, he continued. I do believe you shall hear it from them yourself, Draco. Nart and Zabini are close friends of yours, are they not? Draco's eyes widened, and he grinned, punching Harry playfully. Harry, did you hear that? Theo and Blaze's parents are thinking of defecting. That's great, Draco, Harry grinned back, genuinely happy for his friend. Harry took a deep breath, trying to soak in the feeling of this moment, of these days. He didn't know what the future held, but knew he was happy here now. But now he felt he and Draco could handle what the school year threw at them. He was ready. I hope you enjoyed this. Please let me know your thoughts if you get a chance. Chapter 30, Back to School. Chapter 30, Back to School, and I have taken some liberties. One biggest one, Fred and George Weasley, are only a year older than Harry in this story, and they never left Hogwarts. They haven't yet started Weasley's Wizard Wheezes and are 7th-year students. 2. Severus will still be Potions Professor this year. 3. Harry will not be Quidditch Captain in his 6th year. I'm letting Katie Bell have a chance. Finally, Ron was not on the Quidditch team in 5th year in my story. September 1, King's Cross, London. Severus dropped Harry and Draco at King's Cross before apparating on ahead to school. Don't be foolish, he cautioned them. The boys walked side by side to the train, fully aware of the stares they were getting. See you at the welcome feast. I would say so. Good luck, you too. Harry had just started to check compartments for his housemates when he heard his name being called. Harry, he turned around and smiled at the extremely welcome voice. Hermione, she ran up and gave him a big hug. Oh, I missed you. Come on in, Luna. Neville and I grabbed a compartment. Sounds great. It's so good to see you. You too, Harry, she smiled. After taking a seat and greeting the others, Harry turned back to Hermione. Have you seen Ron? Not yet. I guess the Weasleys are running a little behind. Harry nodded, and then they heard the door opening, and a familiar freckly-faced redhead came in dragging his luggage. Ron. Hey, Myone. Hey, Harry. They gave him a hug and he sat down. How are you, Ron? Did you have a good summer? It was good, yeah. And the boy launched into stories of playing Quidditch and lazing about and having a fun trip to Egypt with Bill. What about you, Harry? Neville asked innocently. Ron stiffened. Oh, my summer was different, but it wasn't bad, actually. Ron snorted. Different is right. Guess who he stayed with this summer? They looked at Harry curiously. Harry sighed. I was going to get there, guys. This summer, Professor Dumbledore assigned me to stay with Professor Snape. Neville gasped. And that's not all. Aren't you forgetting someone, Harry? The boy's tone had taken on a hostile tinge that put Harry on guard. Knock it off. Ron. Harry shot the redhead a look. Professor Snape's godson was also there because his parents had died and he didn't have anywhere else to go. So yeah, I stayed with Professor Snape and Draco Malfoy. That's awful, Neville whispered. Are you okay after all that? Yeah, surprisingly, I'm fine. No, he's not, Ron cut him off. He's obviously not all right if he seems to think he ended up having anything but the worst summer of his life with those slimy, evil, Death Eater, Slytherin gits. His voice had gotten louder with each word until he was almost screaming. Shut up, Ron. You don't know what you're talking about. They are not Death Eaters. They saved me from Voldemort. They are not what we thought. And see how he defends them. Ron was looking hysterical now. This is that thing, what's it called? Stockholm Syndrome, that's it. Hermione, tell him how that works. Maybe he'll listen to you. You mean Stockholm Syndrome, and Ronald, I will do no such thing. Frankly, I don't think you're being a very good friend to Harry. You are certainly not listening to a word he's saying. That's because it's bonkers. He must be under some spell. Harry, are you in there? Are you imperiused? You can fight it, man. Please stop it, Ron, Harry said, feeling exhausted now. It had taken the guy, a minute before he flipped his lid. He knew it would be bad, but this wasp bad. You know what? I don't have to take this. I'm just trying to look out for you, Harry. And with that, Ron dragged his luggage unceremoniously right back out of the compartment, slamming the door behind him. Harry sighed. Was the professor kind to you? Luna asked after a minute in her soft, unassuming voice. He was, she nodded as if that was all that needed to be said. So does that mean Professor Snape doesn't hate you anymore? I definitely don't think he hates me, Nev, Harry said, smiling. It's a long story. Mind if we listen? A knock on the door and Harry looked up. Sorry about our git of a brother. Hey guys, come on in. Fred and George made themselves comfortable immediately, Fred enlarging the bench so he could lie down on it, and George transfiguring a small stool into a cushy chair. Please continue, said Fred. Yes, do tell. Harry was about to start again when a small ginger teen burst into the compartment, looking furious. Hey guys, mind if I sit here? Ron is being impossible, saying all this awful stuff about Harry. As long as you can keep an open mind about what Harry's about to tell us, Jin, I'm sure you're perfectly welcome. Right, Harry. Of course. I was just about to tell them about my summer, Ginny. And yeah, it's what's pissed Ron off so royally. Would you like to hear? Ginny nodded and took a seat next to Luna. Hermione put up a privacy ward around their compartment, and Harry began. He spent a good portion of the trip retelling the highlights of his summer at Prince Manor. By the end, the twins were discussing how they could rope Draco into some of their more interesting potions experiments, and Hermione was gushing about Prince Manor. Oh, I would so love to see it. To think, an ancient ancestral wizarding home. The library sounds just wonderful, and the Japanese tea house and garden sound lovely as well. That's so cool about the secret garden your mum and the professor built together, added Ginny. Luna was just reading her book contentedly, a small smile on her face. Neville had been gaping in shock for parts of the story, but had eventually settled down to just listen. It's really incredible. They must really care about you to have changed so much, Harry. And honestly, just knowing the professor's not all bad makes him less scary, Neville said. Maybe I can try to do a little better in potions this year. So this is all it took for our little brother to brand you a traitor and Slytherin wannabe, George sighed, shaking his head. What a prat, Ginny said miserably. To be fair, Ron hasn't heard the whole story, at least not in detail. Harry felt the need to defend him a little at least, feeling bad that everyone was ganging up on him. But the twins continued, as if they hadn't heard him. Fred put an arm on Harry's shoulder and looked at him seriously. Sorry about our baby bro, Harry. He's always had his head up his own arse when it comes to, well, a lot of stuff, really. Which is to say, we'll try to get him to come around, but no promises on how quickly that will work. It's his loss, really. Jin, what do you say we try to be a little more welcoming to our dear Slytherins this year? At least to Malfoy, Jr., and anyone else who seems okay. Who all seems okay. The Nut Boy, the Greengrass sisters, and Zabini, I think. Parkinson's a nasty piece of work, and those two lumps, Crabbe and Goyle, are hopeless. That's pretty much what Draco said, Harry confirmed. And Tracy Davis is nice, Hermione added. Soon enough, the train began to slow down, and Hermione, as Gryffindor prefect, reminded them to start getting dressed in their school robes, and went out to do her rounds. When she did so, she almost ran straight into Draco Malfoy. "Dra Malfoy," she squeaked. He just looked at her with an eyebrow arched. "I heard that, Granger. I don't recall giving you permission to use my given name." She flushed in embarrassment, irritation, and a twinge of disappointment. "However," he drawled, "as they say, there is no time like the present. Why don't we start again?" He held out his hand to her. "Draco Malfoy," he smirked. "I suppose you may call me Draco," he drawled. "Hermione Granger," she grinned and shook the offered hand firmly. "And you may call me Hermione," she gestured to the compartments of their underclassmen. "Well, shall we?" "I suppose so. Time to strike some fear into the hearts of first years," Draco chuckled evilly. "What the hell is this?" Hermione sighed. "Hello, Ron. Not you too." "Malfoy, get away from Hermione. We all know she's nothing but a dirty little mudblood to you. You ought to watch that mouth of yours, Weasley. And you need to stop stealing my friends. What is going on here?" "That is quite enough." Professor McGonagall, who was the chaperone for this year's trip to the castle, was shooting a very serious glare at the redhead. "Weasley, that behavior is quite unacceptable. You are supposed to be model students for our new first years. I have half a mind to rescind your prefect status." "Sorry, Professor," he grumbled. She nodded. "See to it that it does not happen again." The prefects split up and got to work, Ron shoving past them roughly. After seeing to it that the younger students made it onto the Thistral-drawn carriages, the prefects split to join their friends. Draco climbed into a carriage with the same group he'd ended up traveling with the majority of the train ride. The trip up had been fine once alliances were established, and the new order of things was clearly presented. Draco's allies in Slytherin were those he expected, most obviously the Greengrass sisters, Tracy Davis, Blaise, and Theo. Word of Draco's association with the traitor Snape had apparently been projected loud and clear to the Death Eater kids, as Parkinson and even Crabbe and Goyle had kept their distance so far, just shooting him uncomfortable glances but not actually saying anything. It was obvious this was under the strict orders of their parents, as they looked extremely uncomfortable doing so. Draco fully expected the Death Eater kids to spill the beans to the Slytherin rumor mill right away, and he imagined the whole house would be wise to it all by sundown, if not before. Frankly, this was no skin off of Draco's nose. If anything, it saved him the time of having to explain the situation to the majority of his house. Tracy, Astoria, and Daphne being supportive of him, and Severus was not at all surprising. Blaise and Theo would have been the wild cards if not for Severus' intel he'd shared with Draco. But under privacy wards, they had revealed that their families were in the process of trying to defect, something only made possible thanks to a new potion they had gotten a hold of. Draco was glad, as he'd always liked the other boys. "You wouldn't have had anything to do with the potion in question, would you have, Draco?" Theo gave the blonde a knowing look. "Why ever do you ask?" "Oh, it's just the kind of project you'd throw yourself into. Determining a way to get your godfather off the hook. Add to that you were staying with him, the world's greatest potioneer, all summer with full access to his labs, and Brainy'd say you had the motivation. Professor Snape had the resources and knowledge, and together it seems an obvious lead." Draco stared at him deadpan for a long moment before his mask cracked, and he started to laugh. "Good old Theo. I never could pull one over on you." He collected himself and smiled. "Guilty as charged, except you suggesting Severus was the brains of the operation. I'll have you know the majority of the thinking was done by yours truly." "That's frickin' awesome, man," Blaise said seriously. "Do you know how long my mum has been trying to get out of the Dark Lord's hold? This is giving her the courage to take the plunge," he sighed. "It's risky, of course. Will be targeted, but Mum's got connections. It also helps that so many of the Death Eaters were arrested at the Ministry last year, so their numbers are down, and they're trying to lay low and not cause much trouble publicly at least. If there's a time to defect, this isn't the worst, but do you know what the plan is?" "The plan? To take out the Dark Lord." Professor Snape is obviously a critical part of the opposition forces, so you should know something. I'm not privy to the details of Dumbledore's war strategy, but Harry Potter would be right. I saw you guys together, you know, as you were walking to the train. Looks like you two have a rather different relationship now. Again, guilty, but Harry also doesn't know much more than I do. Yes, we know that some steps were taken this summer to weaken the Dark Lord, but as for what's next, no clue. As for Harry, Severus is determined that he gets to live like a normal teenager this year. We'll see how that goes. So what's he like? Who, Harry? Draco looked uncommonly thoughtful for a moment. He's great, actually. You'd like him. He had a shite upbringing, and it's given him some complexes and made him too eager to sacrifice his own well-being for others, but once you get past that, he can be funny in a sarcastic way. Definitely a little heavy on the self-deprecating humor, though, and a pretty good conversation partner. He's a little like Severus, believe it or not. Will you introduce us? Daphne, who had been silent throughout most of the conversation thus far, asked. Would you like me to? Why else would I ask? Sure, Daph. Draco gave her a suspicious look. What's the angle? Nothing too nefarious, I hope. Or Draco smirked evilly. Don't tell me you've got the hots for the golden boy. Draco laughed as Astoria whacked him upside the head, and Daphne gave him a withering glare. I've never spoken with Harry, but Hermione Granger is nice, added Tracy. You've talked with Granger? Sure, in the library from time to time. She's always happy to be helpful and is easy to talk to. She also doesn't treat me as evil just because I wear green, which is refreshing. Interesting, Draco thought. It seemed his Slytherin friend's curiosity was getting the better of them. Maybe this year the age-old Slytherin-Gryffindor enmity could finally see some shaking up. At the welcome feast, Draco caught his godfather's eye right away, and they shared a nod of greeting. He looked across to the sea of red and gold at the far side of the hall, and saw that Harry seemed to be doing just fine, with a solid group around him, Granger, Longbottom, the twin pranksters, and their little sister. Unsurprisingly, Draco's least favorite Weasley was sitting far away from the group, looking to be in a foul mood. What a loser! To think that such an unimpressive person had gotten to consider himself Harry's best friend for so long. Well, Draco was many things, and he could admit to being a little petty at times. It wouldn't be bad to take advantage of the situation and steal away dear Ronald's place as Harry's closest. Draco smirked, a little thrill rushing through him at feeling just a tad bit evil. The truth, though, was that Draco already saw Harry as something like a best friend, and unless he was sorely misreading the situation, Harry seemed to see him about the same. If he were being totally honest with himself, the truth was that Harry was the closest friend he'd ever had. He had been so caught up in the performance of being a miniature of his father all these years that Draco hadn't really made the closest connections with his housemates or any other children, for that matter, in the past. The conversations he'd had on the ride up with his friends were more candid and real than anything they'd discussed before, not to mention the discussions he'd had with Harry at Prince Manor. Draco, staring at the back of Harry's messy mop of hair, had clearly been noticed, as there were some whispers at the Gryffindor table and weird looks in his direction. He considered making a rude gesture, but at that moment, Harry turned around and waved. Feeling foolish but also very pleased, Draco waved back. At that, the whispers in the great hall increased in volume several times over, which just made Draco even more pleased. After all, he loved being the center of attention. Draco entered the Slytherin common room and took his usual seat by the bay window. In the past, he had liked the extra height it afforded him, as he would pretend to be a prince surveying his kingdom. Now he found it a useful spot from which to look out for hostility in his housemates. He would need to tread carefully. Wards around his bed and belongings was a no-brainer. Of course, given that he was godson of the Slytherin head of house, he didn't expect anyone to pull anything too serious here, as obviously Severus would take Draco's word against theirs every time. Then again, if someone thought they could do something nefarious without getting caught, they absolutely would. They were Slytherin after all. The most likely antagonists among the sixth years were Parkinson, Crabbe, and Goyle, as they were known Death Eater's children. Thus far they had kept their distance, but Draco knew it was only a matter of time before they tried something. The good thing was his dorm would be relatively safe as Theo and Blaze were on his side, and Crabbe and Goyle were too stupid to be much of a threat. Though stupid can be dangerous in its own right, Draco mused. Most of the house had filed in, and without warning, Severus began his usual beginning of year speech in the cold, menacing tones he wielded so well. Draco schooled his features, but on the inside he was grinning, watching his hero of a godfather, acting the part so well and putting the fear of Morgana in them. No one in House Slytherin dared cross Professor Snape, but it wasn't out of fear alone. Despite his acidic demeanor, he did make it clear to his house that he would be there if they needed something, and stood by his word, as many students had relayed. As such, there was an overriding respect for and loyalty to the potions Master and Draco could tell that had not changed, even with the reveal of Severus's loyalties in respect to the war. It was clear to Draco that the Slytherin rumour mill was as healthy as always given what Draco had caught from the low tones and whispers on the train, at the feast, and in the hallways on the way to the dungeons. Once Severus was done, he bid them to find their rooms and get to bed swiftly, as tardiness on the first day would not be acceptable. As Draco made his way down the spiral staircase to his dorm, he got his first dose of stupid. "Malfoy, are you planning to join the Harry Potter fan club this year?" The blonde did not deign to respond to the idiotic fourth year who made that comment. He simply pierced the boy with a withering glare until the idiot looked away. As Draco entered his dormitory, he felt some nostalgia. He did have affection for this old castle, after all. He immediately claimed his usual bed and grimaced at the fact that Goyle would be sleeping right next to him. He set powerful wards on himself, his bed, and his belongings before climbing in, wondering what awaited him this year. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for reading, as always. Chapter 31, Hogwarts. Chapter 31, Hogwartson. I've decided to forgo Harry's being Quidditch captain this year. Also, in my universe, Ron didn't make it onto the team in fifth year. The first double Slytherin Gryffindor class of the year was, as usual, potions. Draco wondered if perhaps this was an example of Dumbledore exercising his weird sense of humor. In any case, the blonde Slytherin waited until Harry had taken a seat before roughly brushing past Weasley and slipping into the seat beside the dark-haired Gryffindor. "I take it this seat is available." Harry looked up in surprise. "Oh, hi, Draco. Yeah, sure it is." "Excellent. Good morning, by the way. Did you settle in all right?" "Yeah, it was fine overall." "It's a little tense in my dorm room," but Harry stopped abruptly, remembering they were in public with said dorm mates right there within earshot. Draco, master of distraction, made a show of turning around and saying in an overly friendly manner, "Why, hello, Granger. How lovely to see you." "And how goes it, Longbottom?" "Hello, Draco," Hermione said with a sardonic smile, rolling her eyes. Neville just choked a little. This had its intended effect. The sound of a chair loudly scraping against the stone floor, and the target of Draco's private battle jumped up, his face turning bright red. "Don't you dare talk to them, you nasty, evil git. I don't know what you think your game is trying to act all friendly with them. You're not fooling anyone, you evil, Death-Eater spawn." "Mr. Weasley," each word was said very slowly and with considerable venom. "Take your seat." Ron looked like he was about to argue but apparently decided to comply. "Fine, sir," he bit out and sat back down grumbling. Draco was shocked Severus hadn't docked points from the weasel, and it looked like he wasn't alone. Even the hot-headed redhead himself was looking confused and bemused, which just made him look constipated. Ah well, time to focus on more important matters. The class was great. Harry was an excellent table partner. As well, he should have been given how often the two had paired together for potions work over the summer. Though the setting was different, and they were working on their own potions rather than a joint project, They quickly fell back into their usual comfortable rhythm. They hardly said a word, and before long were both bottling up their first sixth-year potions and calling the professor over to inspect them. "Full marks, Mr. Malfoy, Mr. Potter." Harry's smile at hearing those words from Severus in this setting was something to behold. "As you both completed your potions well ahead of schedule, you may use the remainder of class time to read ahead or make some progress on a secondary potion of your choosing." "Yes, sir," Draco said. "Thanks, Professor," Harry added. Instead of starting a different potion from their textbook, they instead chose to remake the same potion they had just completed, but this time using a different method of their own invention. This time they did speak as they were working together, but in low tones that Severus did not feel warranted any point deductions for. The class ended without even Neville causing any commotion. "Acceptable, Longbottom," the professor announced, which made the boy gape in shock. All in all, there had never been so few point deductions in this particular class of Slytherins and Gryffindors before. "Mr. Potter and Mr. Malfoy, stay behind," the professor instructed as the students were packing up to leave. Harry motioned Hermione to go on ahead, and she nodded, though it was clear she was bursting to talk to him about everything that had happened in class that day. Once the other students had left, Severus sealed the door and cast a quick ward. "How was the trip up?" "Any issues I should be aware of?" "Nothing too terrible, Severus. It's obvious everyone knows what's going on, and the Death Eater kids' families have probably put them up to something, but so far they haven't tried anything. Keep on your toes, Draco. Come to me immediately if you notice anything suspicious." "Will do, Uncle Save." "And Harry, what of you?" "I'm fine, Professor, thanks. Ron is being a prat, but I expected that. He's obviously been talking about me to my dorm mates because Dean and Seamus are being a little awkward, but I'm trying not to let it bother me." "Good. Do your best to continue to ignore this and put your attention towards your studies and perhaps to forming other connections that are worthy of you and your time." Harry nodded. "Yes, sir." Severus hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I wanted to see if you would both join me in my quarters for tea, say once a week, after classes on Friday. That way we can spend some time in a less public setting and discuss various topics at leisure." "That would be great." Harry spoke first, enthusiastically, which brought a small smile to the potion master's lips. "Excellent. If that is the case, I shall expect you in my quarters, say 7 o'clock this Friday evening. I presume you remember the way, Harry." Harry nodded. He'd been there just once, but didn't think he was in danger of getting lost. "The password is Yakusugi," Harry blinked. "Really? What's that supposed to mean?" "Yes, really. This would not be obvious as a password choice to anyone but you, silly boy." "What?" Draco looked back and forth. "It's the name of this awesome tree in Severus and Mum's secret garden." "Severus, you have to let me see it next time I'm there," Draco whined. "I will consider it, child. Now get you both to class." "Here." He passed them both short letters to excuse any tardiness, though in truth on the first day most teachers were lenient and even started classes 5 minutes later to give the students a chance to get oriented. "Ah, and Harry a clemency on Thursday night." "Yes, sir." Harry nodded and followed Draco out. The rest of Harry's first day was uneventful, which he liked just fine. After potions, he had advanced charms, and then lunch in the great hall where he enjoyed chatting with his friends. He tried not to focus on Ron, who was sitting at the end of the Gryffindor table eating alone, but was not very successful. The redhead hadn't made any more rude comments since potions. In fact, he hadn't made any comments at all, really. He basically just kept to himself and sulked. Though annoyed with Ron and a little hurt, Harry wasn't exactly mad anymore. It was clear Ron was a combination of jealous and genuinely confused. His prejudices were quite ingrained, and he was stubborn, which is something Harry had always known about him. One thing that was different fighting with Ron this time was that Harry knew he had plenty of friends in his corner, whereas in the past a fight with Ron meant he found himself nearly friendless, depending on the year entirely, if not for Hermione. This time, Ron had simply succeeded in isolating himself, and as annoyed as Harry was, he did care for the youngest Weasley boy, and part of him didn't like seeing his first ever friend so isolated. But of course, Ron had brought this on himself. And frankly, worrying about it was mental load Harry didn't want or need, so he told himself to stop worrying. After lunch was Transfiguration and Herbology, which wrapped up the day's classes. Harry and Hermione relaxed in the common room and decided to write a note to Hagrid, asking for a good time for them to stop by. Otherwise, they explored the castle, walking the length from the dungeons to the astronomy tower, just taking it all in again, and enjoyed another delicious feast for dinner with their housemates. When Harry returned to his dorm room that night, Ron's curtains were already drawn, but Dean and Seamus were there. "Hey, guys," Harry said with a friendly smile. "Hope you had a good summer. We didn't really get to chat yesterday." "Oh, hey, Harry," they said, looking a little uncomfortable. "Did you go anywhere fun?" Harry pressed on, not interested in acknowledging that Ron had tried to pull them into any drama. "Yeah, we did, actually. We vacationed together this year in Norway. It was amazing." After breaking the ice, Dean and Seamus both seemed happy enough to talk for a while, and any awkwardness was forgotten. Eventually, Dean broached the elephant in the room. "So, Harry, is it true you stayed with Professor Snape and Malfoy over the summer?" "It's true. And it was rough at first, but eventually they realized some stuff and pulled their heads out of their arses anyway. Things are a lot better now." "It's true that Professor Snape didn't dock any points today," Dean mused. "And I heard a rumor he's a spy trying to take down you-know-who," whispered Seamus. "That's pretty cool if that's true." Harry just smiled and nodded as the two continued to process this information. By the time they were talked out, he expected whatever damage Ron had done was pretty much fixed. It was not a bad thing that Seamus was super chatty, either, as he was likely to help with damage control among other Gryffindors without Harry even having to ask. Well, that was easy, Harry thought. He wished them good night, and with one last look at Ron's bed curtains, climbed into his own four-poster to sleep. The next day, Harry and Hermione made their way down at lunchtime to see Hagrid. "Harry, Hermione, how was your summer?" Hagrid pulled them in for a big bear hug and welcomed them into his hut, Fang immediately slathering them with doggy kisses. "It was good, hey boy. Yes, I know. I missed you too." Harry laughed while trying to speak through the dog's enthusiastic greeting. "Come on in, sit down, sit down." Harry and Hermione exchanged glances at the plate of Hagrid's usual rock-hard rock cakes and tea. They immediately began dipping the cakes in their tea to get a head start on softening them up. "And where's Ron? Don't tell me you're having another row, are ye?" "This early in the year?" "I'm afraid so, Hagrid," said Hermione, and she gave him the rundown, which Harry appreciated. Harry watched Hagrid's reaction to the story, knowing full well that Draco had always been awful to the groundskeeper and was therefore far from Hagrid's favorite person. But the man took it in stride. "Harry," he said seriously, "you know I saw how you were treated by those relatives of yours. I'm right glad as can be that Professor Snape is giving you some stability and support. I'm afraid I can't say I'm sorry as to their being dead. I know that ain't nice, but the way they treated you, an innocent little un." And with that, the man burst into tears, so both teens came over to comfort him. I wish Professor Dumbledore could have listened. I didn't like leaving you there, not at all." "It's my greatest regret, Harry." "I know, Hagrid, and it really wasn't your fault. I'm okay now and you're right. Professor Snape has been really helpful recently. And I know Draco's a prat, but he's been really supportive of all this stuff too. Thar's good. You know I'll always want what's best for ye, Harry. That's all what matters to me." "I know, Hagrid. That means a lot." It was lunchtime a couple of days later when Katie Bell approached Harry. "Hi, Potter, have a good summer." Harry turned to face her and smiled. She had been chosen as captain for the Quidditch team this year. He was happy for her. She was a seventh year after all, and he was glad not to have the extra responsibility. The other option in terms of seventh years was the Weasley twins, and Harry wasn't surprised McGonagall had foregone that option. Quidditch tryouts are 2 weeks away, next Monday, Sep 14 at 4 p.m. Got it. I'll be there. You better. She gave him a teasing smile and waved. Harry noticed Ron standing nearby, and he looked like he had something on his mind. Harry was about to say something, but the redhead turned and walked away quickly. After lunch, Harry had his first runes class. Professor Bathsheba Babbling welcomed him warmly and had him take a seat, quickly explaining to the curious fifth years that he was a transfer and would be with them at least for the semester. Harry took a seat next to, his eyes widened. Luna. I didn't know you were in this class. Hello, Harry, the blonde said dreamily, immediately moving her bag from the otherwise empty chair beside her. Harry took a seat instantly. What luck, he said, grinning. The class was fascinating, and Harry was glad to find he had no trouble keeping up. Mr. Potter, can I have a word? The professor held Harry back at the end, and he approached her curiously. How did you like your first class? It was great, Professor. I'm so glad I'm finally enrolled, and thanks again for approving my request to transfer in. The professor looked at him for a long moment. I was disappointed when I didn't see your name on the roster in my third-year class years ago. After all, your mother was one of my best students, and I still remember what a joy she was to have in class. Really? Absolutely. Which is to say, I'm very glad you had a change of heart, and I look forward to having you as my student. Thank you, Professor. I am very glad to be here. Harry paused. Actually, Professor, I was wondering, do you have any recommendations for extra reading I can do if I did want to test into the sixth-year class? Are you sure you'll have time with your busy schedule? I honestly love runes. I'm sure I can make the time, Harry smiled. Always love to hear a student say that. Well, then if that's the case, the professor motioned him to follow her into an attached room with walls lined with bookshelves. Harry noticed a number of advanced rune books were written by the professor herself. Take these. She passed him 3 books: Principles of Rune Magic for the Advanced Learner, a supplemental guide to advanced runes, and recent magical linguistic discoveries. Principles and recent discoveries are certainly not mandatory to pass my classes, or even to test out of this year. But if you have interest in taking your studies of runes a few steps further, I highly recommend you work to understand the underlying principles at a deeper level, as well as familiarize yourself with the cutting-edge research being done in the field. That makes sense. Thanks so much, Professor. I really appreciate it. Take care of them, and don't hesitate to come to me if you would like to discuss the content. Harry wasted no time catching Draco after classes that day to show him what Professor Babbling had shared, and he was immediately fascinated. Library. Now, Harry laughed, and the two of them made their way up several flights of stairs. Unsurprisingly, Hermione was sitting there already, books spread open on a table she had to herself. Oi, Granger. Hey, Myone, Harry smiled. Mind if we join? Harry, Draco. Draco blinked. That's right, I did give you permission to use my given name, she smiled. You may return the favor, you know, Draco. She gave him a look. Ah, Hermione, oh, that's so weird. Excuse me. I think I'll stick with Granger for the moment if you don't mind. Okay, just kidding. Hermione it is. He turned to Harry. Well, produce the goods. Hermione raised an eyebrow in curiosity, but her expression changed to excitement when she saw the books Harry carefully set out on the table. Wow, I've never seen these, but they look fascinating. I think they're from Professor Babbling's personal collection. Then you need to be really careful with them, Harry. But truly, what a gift. That is, I assume they are on loan, but still. You guys can take a look if you want. I probably shouldn't lend them out to you, but no reason why you can't read them while we're sitting here all together. At that, they divvied up the books and began reading. Harry starting with the book on rune principles, Hermione on supplemental advanced rune magic, and Draco on the recent rune discoveries. After a while, they split and walked to the great hall for dinner. When they were close, they passed a mixed-age group of Slytherin pureblood students. Wow, Draco, I didn't expect you to stoop so low, consorting with a mudblood. Watch out, you don't want her dirty blood infecting you. Harry noticed Gryffindors were now within earshot as well. Ron was among them and took a step forward, reaching for his wand, but before he could do anything, Draco had moved in and had the offending students at wand point. Apologize to her. Now, he hissed. The fourth year who had made the first comment's eyes widened momentarily in fear. I have nothing to apologize for, the boy said hotly. Your comments are unbecoming and do nothing but betray you as an uncouth oaf. Are you aware that this witch here, he said, his voice loud enough that more than just the group around them could hear him, has had mastery of newt-level magic since age 15? How did he know that? Hermione whispered to Harry. Ah, I talk a lot. Come graduation, she is likely to be incredibly successful in life. It would be wise for you to suck up to her, not betray your ignorance. Ah, and who were you again? What family line? I'm afraid you haven't quite made an impression on me thus far, and certainly not a positive one just now. Draco put his wand away and looked around at the curious students, seeing that a large group had gathered. Do not forget, friends, that I am the heir by blood right of the ancient houses of Black and Malfoy. Potter here is similarly heir by blood of the ancient house of Potter and by oath of the ancient house of Black. I have on my side, additionally, the alliance of the ancient house of Prince. Crossing me, or those under my protection, isn't in your best interest. There was absolute silence after that. Draco had admittedly played it up a bit to make the biggest effect once he'd noticed how many students were listening. Now go ahead, Shu. I'm done speaking with you, he said imperiously, waving the students away. He had cast a die, now to see how it would land. Harry and Hermione rushed up to Draco as the crowd began to disperse. Draco, thank you, Hermione whispered. Thank yourself for having mastered a protean charm in your 5th year, Draco quipped. She smiled. So I guess Harry told you about the DA. He did. Really only Neville and Luna came when it counted, though, said Harry. I mean, other than Hermione and the Weasleys. But it was fun getting to teach Dada last year like that. It was honestly a blast. Speaking of Weasley, Draco said tightly. Harry turned around to see while the rest of the crowd dispersed. Ron was still standing there, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. Trying to catch flies, Weasley. No response. Ron, Hermione asked, but still got no response. Ronald, the boy finally jolted out of his stupor, but rather than say anything, just turned and raced away. Harry sighed. So much for that Gryffindor bravery. Balls of steel and all that, Draco remarked. Shush, Draco, said Hermione. He just witnessed something very surprising. I'm still having trouble getting over it myself, she laughed. Draco waved farewell and went to join his Slytherin friends at the table who were eyeing him curiously. What was that about? Yes, do tell. Some foolish children needed a reminder of just who exactly I am, and that I do not suffer attacks on those I take under my wing. On Friday, Harry and Draco met up in the dungeon, together making their way to Severus' quarters. They gave the password to the portrait of sea snakes, and it swung open to reveal Severus's quarters. Harry was immediately hit with the coziness of the space, a fact that had surprised him greatly when he had first entered it before summer break. Hello, boys. Make yourselves comfortable. On the low coffee table in the sitting room, there were already 3 cups of steaming hot tea and a plate of assorted cookies. Draco flopped down as if he owned the place. Harry took a seat beside him with a little more care. Your quarters are really nice, Severus. Yes, the Hogwarts accommodations are more than satisfactory. So tell me, how are you both and have you been staying out of trouble? Admirably so, Severus, Draco said haughtily. Harry rolled his eyes. However, the same cannot be said of other students attempting to press my buttons. I have, however, kept the lessons dignified in the extreme. Yes, word of your dramatic speech did reach me, Severus said dryly. Draco shrugged. It seemed to have made an impact. It certainly cleared them out. Harry then told Severus how his first Ancient Runes class had gone, including the comment about his mother. Yes, I believe I had already shared with you that Lily had a particular talent for languages, and runes was one such example. Harry showed the potion's master the books Professor Babbling had lent him. The tall wizard paged through them carefully, making little noises of appreciation as he went. These are quite excellent. I have read these two already, but the tome on recent research findings is new to me. Perhaps I will procure one for my own collection. Harry nodded. How were your dreams after our occlumency lesson yesterday? Just fine, Harry said, smiling. It seems that as long as I put up my shields, I don't have any nightmares, and since you destroyed the Horcrux, my scar doesn't bother me, and I never have to see through his eyes. That's probably the best thing. I can imagine, Severus said softly. It is a travesty that you had suffered such for so long. Yeah, on the one hand I was used to it, but I still hated it every time I felt it, that connection to him. I am gratified to hear that occlumency is working to prevent you suffering from nightly terrors, but remember, Harry, if you ever have the need, do not hesitate to come to me. We can have an extra session, or I can even get you dreamless sleep on occasion. Thank you, Severus, really. It was Saturday morning, and Hermione had just left the common room to spend some time in the library. Harry shook his head good-naturedly at how absolutely in love with that place his friend was. Hey, Harry, do you have plans for this morning? It was Ginny and the twins. Oh, hey, guys. We were just planning to head out to the pitch. Want to come with? That sounds great. After they'd done a first round of practice Quidditch, Fred and George as beaters, Harry versus Ginny as chasers, a voice called out from below. Mind if I join? It was a certain blonde Slytherin. Draco, Harry landed beside him. Why not? But are you sure your team won't consider that helping the enemy? Aren't your tryouts coming up too? Even if they did, they wouldn't be able to afford not to choose me. Harry shook his head, laughing. Whatever you say. Why, hello there, Weasley, Weasley, and Weasley. Harry rolled his eyes. Draco, dear pal, have we been meaning to talk to you? Draco looked at them, one eyebrow arched as high as it could go. Oh, about what, pray tell, and what did you just call me? Ah, well, a friend of a friend, and all that. Draco shook his head. He knew from observation that these twins were persistent and would do what they wanted in the end. And I repeat, about what did you want to speak with me? Oh, just an innocent potions chat. Harry mentioned what a whiz you are, and we have an enterprising proposal that may be of interest to you. Oh, guys, can you save that for later? I thought we were going to play. Ah, Jin, always itching to get back out there. We're an uneven number is the only thing, so we'll have to switch off. Not necessarily, said Draco, grinning. We may be in luck. Oi, Trace. Tracy Davis happened to be walking out onto the pitch as well, having planned to do some private practice of her own. Hey, Draco, what's up? Care for a quick game? If you don't mind playing chaser opposite Weasley, female Weasley, that is. I do have a name, you know, the redhead said, irritated. Draco ignored her. Well, sure, I wouldn't mind. Excellent. Then I believe some quick introductions are in order. Harry Potter. Harry smiled and reached out a hand. No introduction necessary, Potter. I'm Tracy Davis. She took his hand. Ginny Weasley. She shot Draco a look. I'm Gred and he's Forge. Ouch, Gin. I think I get the picture. It's nice to meet you, she smirked. A few minutes later, they were back up in the air. Harry versus Draco as seekers, Fred versus George as beaters and keepers, and Ginny versus Tracy as chasers. They took off right away, and as always, the thrill of flying took over and everything else was forgotten. Flying was pure joy. He and Draco locked eyes and grinned, understanding each other perfectly in that moment. When they landed after quite a few rounds, they were tired but happy. Not bad, Weasley. Not bad yourself, Davis. Maybe we could do it again sometime. I wouldn't mind. We'll be in touch, Fred stage whispered to Draco with a sly look. Whatever you say, Draco said, waving them off as they departed. The others went on ahead to the great hall for lunch. Draco and Harry turned to each other and grinned. Well, that went pretty well. But of course, I was the perfect gentleman. How could they resist me? Harry shoved Draco good-naturedly, and the blonde laughed. You've changed, you know. Um, what do you mean? You never would have dared to be so carefree before. I think you're finally aware you have people in your corner who will not abandon you. Harry blinked. What's with the psychoanalysis stuff? Shush and listen. I'm good at this stuff. Was Draco right? Had Harry been worried all this time deep down that even his close friendships could break if he said the wrong thing, acted in a way they didn't expect? You've tested your friendships finally, and now you've even seen you can befriend former enemies. In the case of Severus and me, we've certainly seen the worst of each other many times, and yet look at us now. It proves that even relationships like ours can be mended. Harry just looked at his friend, marveling at how insightful Draco was when he cared to be. By the way, do you know of any good secret hideouts? Harry blinked at the abrupt change of topic. Several, what do you have in mind? Mostly studying and socializing. I mean, that doesn't have to be secret, and we have the library. Yes, yes, library meetups are great, but you have to stay quiet, and it's only useful for public-facing get-togethers. What about when we want to fully drop the mask like we do at home? No, I'd like something else, a place of our own we can use for studying, as well as for socializing. Any ideas? Of course, Slytherins would be used to masking aspects of themselves in public, Harry mused. Sorry to state the obvious, but what about the room of requirement? It will become whatever you need after all. The room off what? Is this some sort of Gryffindor secret? Show it to me now. It's what I used for the didn't I mention it? Can we at least get something to eat? Fine. Grab something to go. Harry rolled his eyes. So demanding, they stopped by the kitchens, and Harry requested a couple of sandwiches for them, thanking the house elves genuinely. At Harry's urging, Draco managed a small nod and thanks as well. They then walked up a number of flights of staircases until they reached the 7th floor. Harry quickly explained how the room worked and that some things could not be taken out, such as food. If you were to eat food that originated in the room, it would disappear once you left, so you would be hungry again, even if you had just feasted inside. Draco pictured the space he had in mind, and they entered. Inside was part cozy, oversized reading nook with an array of different seating, cushions, couches, chairs, and part library with a large collection of books and comfortable-looking desks and chairs. This will do, he said in approval. So you're thinking we use this as a meet-up space for you and me, or for our friends too? Draco nodded, indicating that was what he had in mind. Is that wise? Why not? I'd like to actually get to spend some time with you where the whole school isn't watching you prat. And while tea with Severus once a week is nice, and the library will do in a pinch, this is a place we can go whenever we choose. Draco pierced Harry with a look. And yes, you may bring friends, but use proper judgment. No Ronald Weasels. Harry rolled his eyes. Ron may come around yet, Draco. Just give him time. I'll believe it when I see it. Anyway, in general, I like the idea. It would be nice for my other friends to get to know you, Draco, and I'd like to meet your friends too. Excellent. What do you say we plan a group meetup here, same time tomorrow? Make sure everyone brings some food as we'll be eating here instead of at the Great Hall. Harry nodded. It's a deal. I hope you enjoyed this. Chapter 32. Eyes Opened. Chapter 32. Eyes Opened. Hope you enjoy the chapter. A few days later, Harry brought a small contingent of his closest friends to the room of requirement. When they entered, they found the Slytherins were already making themselves at home. Beyond Tracy and Draco, Harry had never interacted with the others at all. He took a moment to remember the traditional wizarding etiquette he'd learned that summer and approached the small group. A slight bow, just low enough to show sufficient respect for those you considered equals, and an offered hand. I realize we've been year mates all this time, but we haven't had the chance to be properly introduced. I'm Harry Potter and I look forward to our association. So proper, said the older of the two blonde witches. Her voice was a little lower than Harry expected, though not in an unpleasant way. She gave him a little smile and took the offered hand. Daphne Greengrass. A pleasure, Harry Potter. One by one, the Slytherins introduced themselves. Harry's friends followed his example until they were all officially no longer strangers. When it got to Hermione and Theonard's turn, Hermione's cheeks turned a little pink. "We've met," she said softly, and then looking him in the eye, continued, "Thank you, by the way, for the other day. Don't mention it, and you've already thanked me plenty, Granger." "What happened?" Astoria asked. "Parkinson targeted Granger on Saturday in the hall outside of the library. I happened to be in the right place to stop the attack." "What? Why didn't you tell me, Hermione?" "I suppose I should have, sorry, Harry. Honestly, it slipped my mind. Afterwards, Theo and I got to talking, and then I spent a few hours in the library." She trailed off. "Theo," Draco mouthed to Astoria. "I did inform Professor Snape, Potter." "Thanks not," Harry said in surprise, "and thanks for helping Hermione." "Have they tried anything else?" Ginny asked. "Crabbe and Goyle tried to plant something in my belongings, apparently, but Blaise and Theo caught them and have the evidence." "Ugh. We need to do something before someone gets hurt." "Leave it to me," said Draco. "Really?" he stressed at the dubious looks the group shot him. "For what it's worth, I do know them quite well, and we were friends for a long while. I can talk to them, see if we can avert anything more unpleasant." "I promise I won't take any risks," he said at the sounds of protest. After that, the group took seats and enjoyed their lunches while chatting about various things. Ginny, Neville, Luna, Tracy, and Astoria found they were all fascinated by zoology and herbology, and had an in-depth discussion about rare plants followed by magical animal conservation. Fred and George pulled Draco to a corner of the room to give him an enthusiastic spiel on their idea for a very special joke shop. They apparently had samples and needed someone to help distribute them in Slytherin House. They also thought Draco may have some ideas for new concoctions. That left Harry and Hermione with Theonard, Blaise Zabini, and Daphne Greengrass. "So I understand you helped Draco with his potion this summer, Potter." Harry looked at Theo. "That's right, but I only played a supporting role. He and Severus did the lion's share." "It's so strange to hear you call him Severus," Daphne commented. "Yeah, it's insane to me too how much has changed," Harry said. "And it's more than just your relationship that has changed. The professor seems it's hard to describe, somehow less burdened." "Certainly less on edge," Daphne mused. "What is Professor Snape like as your head of house?" Hermione asked, genuinely curious. "He's certainly strict, but he makes it clear he wants the best for us and expects the best. And he tries to ensure we have the proper support if there's something getting in the way," answered Daphne. "He's always been an advocate for ensuring children are protected from harm, even if that harm comes from their living situation. He is fiercely protective of students he finds have come from abusive households." "Well, that explains a lot," Harry muttered, and then flushed, not having meant to let that slip, annoyed that the three Slytherins were now giving him looks of intense curiosity. Hermione attempted to pull the focus away from Harry. "I always suspected there was more to the professori, was just never able to establish a relationship that would let me close the distance between us." "You know, Hermione, Severus did tell me he approves of you," Harry said. "Which in Professor Snape's speech means he thinks quite well of you." Hermione looked pleased. "Really, that's nice to hear. What scintillating conversation are you all having over here?" "Hey, Draco, the twins finally release you." Draco put on a whole woe is me, asking for sympathy face. "Why didn't one of you rescue me?" he whined. "Was it that bad?" "Worse. So dramatic. So not, Zabini, would you like to help us test some new products?" The twins had popped over and Draco slipped away to the library section of the room. Hermione followed him. "Thank you for setting this up. It's very nice to finally meet other people without having to maintain this weird fiction about our houses being enemies. Honestly, I mostly just missed Harry. If our friends are on reasonably good terms, it means far more opportunities to hang out. Not that I'd really let that stop me. I also wanted them to meet you so they could see for themselves what I've observed." "That makes sense, and I, for one, am glad." "Oh, Draco, I've been meaning to ask, how are you liking Shogun?" Hermione's tone filled with childlike enthusiasm as she changed the subject, as did Draco's. "It's so good, Granger, so good. It honestly had me hooked from page one. I may need to take a trip to Japan next summer. Oh, you absolutely should, she gushed. I was there with my parents last year, and there is so much. Do you know, we stayed in a temple in the mountains near this enormous graveyard in a beautiful forest. Do you mean Okanoin? A surprised voice came from her right. Hermione turned to see the question came from Daphne. Yes, that's right. We stayed in Koyasan last Yule, Astoria chimed in, walking over. Okanoin in the winter is really beautiful, and you should see how clear the stars are at night. Oh, so did you also do the night tour, or at least walk the graveyard at night? Of course. How could we have missed that? Wow, how cool that we have that experience in common. Have you been to Japan before? Absolutely. It's one of our mother's favorite places in the world, so we've been quite a few times. Mother especially loves mountain onsens, so we've been to a good number. I'd love to hear your recommendations sometime. Do you have a favorite onsen? That's difficult, though. There was one in Jiro we visited on our last trip that was pretty special. An excited gasp came from Granger in response to the Greengrass sisters' description of the hotel. Even Draco had to admit, the beautiful traditional room with a wraparound porch and view of a Japanese garden. Not to mention the experience of an outdoor hot spring in the mountains with soft, fluffy snow falling slowly into the water as you bathed. Sounded all right. Okay, I'm going to have to let Mum and Dad know about that one, the Muggleborn said. Later, walking back to their dorm, Draco turned to Daphne. So what? What was your impression of the Gryffindors? I like them. Oh, Hermione's nice and smart, and it turns out we have plenty in common. And Harry, honestly, all of them, I wouldn't mind seeing again. Theo, Blaise, do you agree? I suppose I can understand what you see in them. Theo nodded in agreement. By the way, let us know what you want us to do about Crabbe and Goyle planting that cursed item. You're the target, so I wanted to hear from you. And again, you have evidence. Of course. Idiotsi don't actually want them to be expelled. So you'll talk to them first then. Yes, I think so. If they don't shape up, we escalate it to Dumbledore if we must. Though Severus is where we start. He is reliable and gets the job done. They walked in silence for a bit before Daphne spoke up in a hesitant voice. Draco was Potter treated poorly by his relatives. That's not my business to share, but why do you ask? He let something slip. That really is something you should ask him. If you get to the point where he trusts you to that extent, he may answer. Daphne looked at Draco piercingly. You're a good friend to him. While Draco preened at that, Daphne privately thought it said a lot about Harry Potter that he could have had such an effect on both Draco Malfoy and Severus Snape. Crabbe, Goyle, Parkinson. The three jumped at the cold tone of Draco's voice. They also found they couldn't move. I hear you three have been naughty recently, he chuckled evilly. They exchanged uncomfortable looks and tried to get out of their restraints to no avail. And I'll tell you what, Draco said, walking slowly around them, playing lazily with his wand in an obvious show of power. I shall give you a choice. Expulsion effective immediately, or if you rethink your ways, a second chance. I have evidence, you see, and you will be out on your arses if you don't convince me you can commit to change. He stopped their complaints short with his wand. I'm not done speaking. Do not forget, I am the true son and heir of two ancient pureblood houses. Severing my affiliation with and support of a half-blood wizard who went crazy long ago does not in any way diminish my power. If anything, it secures my position in the wizarding world. Are you, really, quite certain you wish to make me your sworn enemy? Draco could tell it was working. The stubborn glint in their eyes was starting to fade to be replaced with a look of uncertainty. But Draco, our fathers, Crabbe began. Shut it, Crabbe, Parkinson hissed. But Pansy, what if Draco's right? Is it really good to make him an enemy? Draco's eyes widened in surprise at the usually dim-witted Slytherin's comment. And what do you mean the Dark Lord's a half-blood? That was Crabbe. Ah yes, turns out his actual name is Tom Riddle Jr., a name he got from his filthy muggle father, Tom Riddle Sr. Isn't that fascinating? Draco said meanly. This seemed to give them all pause. Ugh, you're trying to trick us. This is all your fault, Draco, Parkinson burst out suddenly. Why would you choose that son of a mudblood Potter over us? Is it blackmail, a curse? Parkinson, Draco said in fake patience. We've known each other since we were children, yes. Yes, so what's your point? For one, you should know me better than that. If I were under duress, it should be obvious to you. Also, he held up a hand before continuing to stop her interjecting. You should know that I get what I want, almost without exception. Have you forgotten that I approached Potter on day one at Hogwarts? Light wizard he may be, but he was the famous son of the House of Potter, which is one of the ancient 10. Yes, but Potter was inexcusably rude to you. True, but he has since made up for that. He finally came to me and shook my hand of his own volition, explaining why he had rejected my handshake in the first place. Did you know, he said, that Potter came to Hogwarts having been deprived of even the most basic knowledge of pureblood decorum at no fault of his own. His Muggle relatives had kept him in the dark, fully. He despised them. And before you start thinking that he's such a perfect goody two-shoes, you should know he was almost put in Slytherin House. All three pairs of eyes widened. The Sorting Hat, I am coming to realize, may do more harm than good. It separates us from others who may be more like-minded than we realize. I have found this to be extremely annoying, and am taking it as a mission to show that alliances can indeed be made with those dressed in different colors. It's only common sense to form strong alliances with other talented witches and wizards. That is what I am doing. Finally, even Parkinson looked thoughtful. Well, Pansy, I guess that makes sense. But I heard you defending that mudblood Granger, Draco. I just don't get it. You hated her before. True, but I have grown up. She flinched at the obvious barb there. I have grown up enough to see potential in capable wizards and witches beyond how their magic happened to originate within them. For all we know, Granger has in her ancestry an extremely powerful witch or wizard. Given her strength, it could even be one of the founders in her blood. I'd put my money on Rowena. I would therefore rather be on civil terms than not. I am not asking for you to see her this way. I am simply telling you that is my point of view, and am saying in no uncertain terms you had better respect that and stop with the childish attacks, or you will face consequences that I am all too happy to dish out. Understand? He gave them a long moment for that to sink in, but eventually they nodded. He stared at them for another minute before finally releasing their restraints, letting them collapse to the ground unceremoniously, just as a final message that they were in his power, and not the other way around. And just so we have an understanding, no more attacks, no more planting of poisons or cursed objects. Nothing. Next time I will not let our past relationship influence me. I will go straight to those on high. They gulped and nodded. The talk Draco had with his former friends seemed to have been effective, as they didn't cause any more trouble after that. They seemed to be quite cowed, in fact. He didn't trust that they would ever fully come around to his way of thinking, but as long as they stopped being aggressors and threats to him and his circle, he was satisfied. Finally, it was the day of Quidditch tryouts for Gryffindor and Slytherin, Gryffindor in the morning, Slytherin in the afternoon. Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff were to be held the next day, on Tuesday. Harry made his way out to the pitch and was surprised to see Ron among the students lined up for a turn. The previous year, Ron had tried and failed to make the team, which had made his self-confidence plummet to new lows. As annoyed as Harry was with the boy, he was glad to see him there and hoped he did well. "Hey," he said to the redhead. Ron jumped. "Oh, hey. Just wanted to say, I've seen you play a ton with your brothers and Ginny, and you're really good. You've got this." The look on Ron's face was both grateful and hopeful. Harry just gave him a smile and thumbs up and went to get ready himself. Then it began. After 2 hours, the team had 3 chasers, Katie Bell, Ginny Weasley, and newcomer Demelza Robbins. Beaters were the Weasley twins, of course. Seeker was Harry and keeper Ron. When the results were announced, Ron looked absolutely stupefied, but then once it sunk in, he was so clearly happy that when Harry, Ginny, and the twins came over to congratulate him, he hugged them. "Good for you, Ron, well deserved," said Harry. "Thanks," he said, grinning like a loon. "You know, I've been practicing every chance I can get. It shows." Harry, thanks for the encouragement before I went on. It made a difference. And look, I'm sorry for being a prat. I know you're not a Death Eater lover," and he sighed. "If you say Malfoy and Snape have changed well, then I reckon they must have." Harry grinned at Ron. "Thanks, I missed you, you know." "I missed you too." Ron looked uncommonly thoughtful. "To be honest, I've seen it too, how their differenti saw Malfoy, and not defending Hermione, and even Snape's being pretty fair these days, but don't expect me to get all lovey-dovey with Malfoy," Ron said seriously. "I would never," Harry grinned. "But hey, at least you may have some better partners for wizard's chess. Blaise Zabini is pretty good. Tracy and Astoria aren't slouches, either." That afternoon were the Slytherin tryouts. The main new addition to the team was Tracy Davis as chaser. The dark-haired sixth year was visibly pleased walking from tryouts. "Congrats, Tracy. Harry, Ginny, you were watching." "Yep, and we've seen you fly, so it's not surprising. But it is exciting. I can't wait to go head-to-head with you, chaser versus chaser," Ginny grinned. "Oh, Tracy, I haven't introduced you to my friend Ron." The dark-haired Slytherin nodded. She'd wondered when they were going to mention the guy standing there with them. "Hi, Ron, I'm Tracy." She offered him a smile, deciding not to pry as to what had happened to put him back on good terms with Harry. "Oh, hey," he said awkwardly. "I'm Ron Weasley, obviously." He quickly shook her hand. "You were good," he offered. "Thanks, you were too, this morning at tryouts, I mean." "You saw that?" His ears turned pink. She smiled. "Sure, I have friends in Gryffindor now, so I thought I'd watch their tryouts for once. It was also a way to get my mind off my own tryout," she admitted. "I get that," Ron said. "Hello, all," an aristocratic voice sounded from behind. Ron immediately stiffened. "Draco," Harry warned. "Relax, relax." Draco looked at Ron and grimaced. "Weasley." He let out a dramatic, long-suffering sigh. "You are far from my favorite person, as you are well aware. And of course I know you don't like me, but it seems you and Harry are back on better terms. In light of that, and given that we both care for Harry, I propose a truce, for now at least." Ron grimaced, but eventually nodded stiffly like a broken toy. Harry felt a huge swell of affection for both Draco and Ron all of a sudden. The fact that these two, as antagonistic as their relationship was, and had always been, were putting in even a little bit of effort to mend their relationship for his sake, meant so much. "There, that wasn't so bad, was it, Ron?" Ginny asked, grinning, after the Slytherins walked away. The redhead pretended to gag. Harry grinned, another piece of the puzzle falling into place. "Hope you enjoyed it. The next one will be up tomorrow." Chapter 33, The Unburdening. Chapter 33, The Unburdening. Thank you for your reviews. I hope you enjoy this. Over the next few weeks, Harry and his friends continued to adapt to a new normal. While the mixed group of Gryffindors and Slytherins spent most of their time together in the Room of Requirement, which had become part competitive game room thanks to Blaise and Ron's near-constant games of wizard chess, they also spent time together in other settings. And others noticed, but the glances directed at Harry and his friends were getting less and less hostile and more curious as time passed. Harry hadn't seen any other mixed groups crop up, as of yet beyond the occasional Hufflepuff or Ravenclaw, which had long been a more acceptable intermingling at the school. But Harry and Draco had started something, that was for sure. Harry hoped it would take root, and that over time others would see there was no sense in keeping unnecessary walls up simply due to the decision of a ratty old magical hat. Harry entered Severus' quarters on Friday night to find Draco and Severus already deep in conversation. "That the orders are coming in so quickly is keeping me on my toes, though for good reason. I can help with the brewing, Severus." "Evening, Severus." "Hey, Draco." The two Slytherins looked up from where they were heads down over a stack of parchment to greet him. "What are you working on?" We are taking inventory of the orders coming in for Silentium Signum, Severus explained. It's going well, then. Better than we could have hoped, Draco enthused. Really? So what does that mean? I am cautiously optimistic regarding the implications for the war. We have been able to convert a large number of his forces, excepting the majority of his inner circle. And Voldemort hasn't caught on, Draco grinned. That's the most brilliant thing. Tell him, Save. I have ensured a secrecy pact has been made part and parcel with the potion. Even entering into the inquiring stage ensures the prospective buyer is unable to share any knowledge or information regarding it with Voldemort or his inner circle. Managing the supply chain has been difficult, therefore, as we cannot go the typical route of word of mouth. I have identified likely buyers myself and reached out directly in each case. The benefits of the potion have had to speak for themselves. Happily, they have done so, and quite effectively. The adoption rate of those who have tried it is 95, Severus continued. There was only one case where I reached out to a buyer who tried the potion and then got cold feet. As explained in the pact, all knowledge of the potion and interactions involving it were obliviated from said wizard's mind. That's really great news. What's up, Harry? Harry shook his head. It's just so weird. They looked at him expectantly for him to explain himself. Well, everyone used to keep stuff about the war from me, and it always made me super angry, like I needed to know what was going on. I think it's because I knew I was going to be forced to play a big part, so it was crazy the double standard of treating me like a dumb kid, but also expecting me to be their trump card. But now I'm interested, but it doesn't bother me to be left out of it, kind of like I'm finally okay with letting others handle it. Perhaps because there's finally a competent adult you can trust to drive things properly. It's got to be. I suppose I should take that as a compliment, Mr. Potter. Severus relaxed his features. Truly, Harry, what you say is perfectly reasonable. At the time, I saw your curiosity as meddling. Now, however, I see the truth in what you say. Even before you were told as much explicitly, the way things were conducted, the way your life was allowed to be mishandled, must have felt very wrong indeed. I imagine it was obvious the headmaster expected something of you, but at the same time never revealed what was truly on his mind. Severus looked lost in thought. This is something that I have myself encountered on many occasions with the headmaster. I have often felt very much like the man's puppet, living in a state of constant blackmail, emotional and otherwise, to continue to play my part. Harry had never considered that. Another way he and Severus had something in common. They had both been pawns. To think everyone thinks of him as a benevolent old wizard when he's really an evil mastermind, Draco mused. I wasn't a pawn in his scheme, was I? Everyone was a piece on his great game board, Draco. For the most part, I would say your part was simply to keep playing the part of an extremist, to make Harry see Slytherins as evil and fundamentally incompatible. I have long had a sneaking suspicion that the wizard's tendency to allow bullying under the guise of interhouse rivalry was misguided at best, but I see now it was likely more nefarious than I had previously believed. What do we do about him? Severus smiled. Continue to do what you are, break down walls. Your work is being noticed, Severus said significantly. Harry and Draco exchanged glances. Really? Yes, you have created waves, and the effects of these may be more far-reaching than even you know. There is a reckoning coming. At that point, Severus changed the subject, and try as they might, Harry and Draco could not get him to revisit the point any more that evening. They took the cue and relaxed to discuss other matters until it was time to depart for their dorm rooms. Since the beginning of the school year, Severus and Harry would meet once every 2 weeks for occlumency lessons. Harry had long since mastered the basics, so Severus had been making some changes to increase the difficulty and push Harry just one step further, insisting that as long as Voldemort was still at large, it was of the utmost importance, even now that the Horcrux was gone. In an attempt to increase the challenge, Severus suggested they hold their future lessons in his office, it having been the location of their disastrous former lessons, and hence a place where Harry felt far from comfortable. This did the trick. At first, the memory of the old lessons took him, and Harry began to fall apart as soon as Severus entered his mind. But the potions master, who now actually cared to see Harry succeed, noted this immediately and paused the lesson to give his student time to collect himself. Harry, take a moment. If needed, take yourself through a short meditation session before we begin again. There is no rush. Harry nodded and took a deep breath. It really helped that Severus was now so sensitive to Harry's state of mind and needs. He let his eyes wander around the office, and then they landed on something he had never noticed before. In the corner beside Severus' large foreboding desk was a pedestal, and on top of that, a Japanese bonsai tree that reminded him very much of the ancient cedar back in his mum and Severus' garden. Strange he'd never noticed it before, but now it brought a sense of familiarity to this space that had always been a place of stress for him. It reminded him that he was not back in the past with Professor Snape, who hated him. He was here with Severus, whom he had grown to know so well over the past 5 months, who was always there when he needed him, who had made it his duty to ensure Harry could have a normal life. That was enough to help him ground himself, and he locked eyes with the potions master. "I'm ready, sir." Severus nodded and entered Harry's mind. Through his occlumency practice, Harry's mind had become a much more ordered place than it had once been. Whereas before there was no telling what memory Severus would come upon first, now Harry had his most personal, dark moments tucked safely away, with the exposed memories, those he wouldn't mind the man seeing in any case. Memories of flying with Draco, having tea under the sakura trees, a feeling of pressure, and Harry could feel Severus trying to penetrate the wall of contentment Harry had created. But Harry swiftly navigated the man back into safe waters. They repeated variations on this dance over and over again until Severus pulled back. "Excellent. Really, sir. Yes, you have by now formed quite a solid occlumency shield to remain up at all times. Is it remaining intact even while you sleep?" "I think it is, yeah. I haven't had any nightmares in weeks." "That is excellent to hear. You have truly come a long way." Harry felt his cheeks turn pink. "I couldn't have done it without you, so thank you so much for teaching me." Severus nodded. "Harry, would you care to join me for tea?" "Oh, yes, that would be great." A few minutes later, they were both situated comfortably in the potion master's private quarters, a steaming pot of tea between them. They spoke about Harry's classes, Severus' research. Eventually, they eased into a companionable silence. Harry peeked a look at Severus' face. He seemed uncommonly relaxed and not averse to conversation. Perhaps it was not a bad time to broach a topic he'd been meaning to ask about. Severus, Yes, Harry." The potion master reached for his cup of tea and settled comfortably back into his chair. "I was wondering if you wouldn't mind telling me a little about when Mum visited you at the manor," Harry said quickly. "I mean, it's okay if you would prefer not to. I don't mean to pry. The elves shared a little with me, and I know about the garden, of course, but I don't know much else." It stood to reason the boy would be curious about these matters, Severus thought. Very well, he could do that for the boy. He knew it always meant so much to Harry to learn more about his mother. "To tell that story, I am afraid I need to first begin with the history of what led up to it, which is significantly less pleasant," Severus warned. Harry nodded, and the man began. "As you know, my father," he spat the word, "was an abusive alcoholic. He was never a father to me. He was my tormentor, and the man I wished would go away and leave me and my mother alone. One day, I got my wish. He often went out to spend the money my mother made for us through her potions work. He was happy to use the cash, though he never missed a chance to berate her for her magical line of work. And one night had a little more to drink than usual and drove himself into a tree. It's just lucky he didn't take anyone else with him." Harry nodded, not sure what other response was appropriate. "I realize it is not a healthy reaction to celebrate the death of one's own father, but in my case, our lives after Tobias' death were strictly better." It was timing, too, that led to things turning out as they did. My mother had been disowned for marrying a muggle, but her parents had passed away earlier in the year and had, to her surprise, reinstated her as heir to the prince line before their deaths. This had been a surprise to her, and it was much to her grief that she was not able to make amends with her family before they died. Severus took a deep breath and continued. But such is common in our family. To not say much, and to wait to say enough until it's too late in any case. With Tobias dead and the prince heritage back in our hands, my mother and I were free to move from the soot-covered sty that was Spinner's End to Prince Manor. Our first few weeks there, it was hard to come to terms with such being a possible new reality for us. To live in splendor and finery, rather than rags as we had to that point took some getting used to. That summer, I invited Lily to visit. And it was through her eyes, her pure, optimistic perspective without the family baggage and innate pessimism that clouded mine, that made me truly come to love Prince Manor and take steps to make it my own. The garden was one such example, but when Lily visited, the place would come to life. She would often have tea with my mother and me, and work in the potions labs with us, as you and Draco so often have. Severus closed his eyes in reverie. She loved the library. She loved the grounds. Together, she and I explored all sorts of things, learned about different parts of the world. She made me feel grateful for what I had, for the first time in my life for a time, at least. The man's face clouded over with shadows all of a sudden. My innate darkness is what drove her away. I see that now. It peaked with my calling her that unforgivable word, but that was not where it started. Harry just continued to listen intently, not wanting to interrupt, and not sure at all if the professor still realized he was there, so lost as he was in his memories. My spellcrafting, in particular, was something I began with the intent of getting back at the marauders. While even I can see that many of my creations were inspired, they were not something about which I wanted to confide in Lily, particularly Sectum Sempra. I did not speak to her for a full 2 weeks whilst developing it, and then for her to discover it that same terrible day. Did Mum truly never forgive you? It's just hard to believe after everything between you that she would just shut you out like that, Harry murmured. Severus looked surprised, both to hear Harry speak after his extended monologue and by Harry's words themselves. Harry, I said something unforgivable to her. Not unforgivable enough to destroy a friendship like yours. I would have given you another chance, he said hotly. I do like to think we would have reconciled had we had the time. But then Voldemort killed her. Yes, he said darkly, and of course there was the part I had to play in that. What? Severus looked horrified. He had clearly revealed something he had intended to take to the grave. The wizard stood up, walked to his cabinets, poured himself a finger of whiskey, and downed it before coming back. He sat down and looked Harry in the eye. For a long time he didn't say anything, just seemed to be weighing his next step. Suddenly he stood up again, walked around the couch, and sat back down before finally starting to speak, his expression pained. The prophecy, the one that pegged you as being the one to destroy the Dark Lord through your own demise, am the one who overheard it, he whispered, shame overcoming his whole being. Harry sat there frozen. No, and I am the one who delivered it to Voldemort. No. In all the time he had known Severus Snape, thought him evil, Harry had never truly thought the wizard had a thing to do with his being made an orphan. To learn now after their relationship had changed so drastically that indeed the man had had a hand in exactly, Thackeray wasn't sure what to think. I delivered the prophecy to Voldemort, he repeated. Like the good little up-and-coming Death Eater I was, he spat, self-hatred evident in his tone. Silence. Is that it? Harry's voice sounded nearly as dead as Severus's. Lupin, realizing the evil wizard intended to target Lily Andrew, made a choice. I went to Albus Dumbledore, pleaded with him to protect her, to get her out of harm's way. So then you did what you could to protect her, us. He never would have targeted you in the first place if I hadn't reported that thrice-cursed prophecy, Severus roared. When he spoke next, it was again in the quiet, pained tones of before. I have lived with this every moment of my miserable life since that day. I care deeply for your mother, Harry. I think by now you know that without my having to say as much. To not only have to suffer outliving her without ever having reconciled, but to know that if I hadn't been so bloody foolish that she would still be alive. Severus covered his face in his hands and took several big, deep breaths. If you wonder how a man could turn out to be the way I am, look no further than to this, my shameful history, he whispered. The two sat in silence, Severus' words running through Harry's mind. Harry was conflicted. It was true, Severus was partly responsible for everything that had happened. Then again, Severus hadn't known at the time that what he was reporting would lead to Voldemort targeting them. And while it didn't speak well of him that he would have reported the prophecy to the Dark Wizard in any case, Harry couldn't help empathize with the man to some extent, knowing as he did the pain of having himself been indirectly responsible for Sirius' death. In any case, Severus had clearly lived with the guilt every moment since the death of Harry's mum. He had surely punished himself more than enough for several lifetimes. Don't worry, Mr. Potter. You need not explain a thing. I appreciate the time you have allowed me to spend getting to know you these past months. Please know I will always be there to protect you from whatever distance you find acceptable, but I fully understand that you would not wish to be around me at such close quarters any longer. Severus, no, that's hold on. The potion's master blinked, the stream of words delivered in the voice of a dead man walking coming to a halt. Severus, listen to me, Harry said, staring at the man until the older wizard forced himself to meet the boy's gaze. I forgive you. What are you saying? How could you possibly forgive me? I killed your parents, Potter. No. Voldemort killed them, just like Bellatrix killed Sirius, even though I blamed myself for being so bloody stupid as to fall for Voldemort's trick and lead him to that place. In both cases, we were pawns, used by Voldemort and tricked into contributing to the death of someone we loved. It is no more tragic for anyone than us, Harry continued. I know you loved my mum. You would never have done anything to hurt her. Severus was silent for a long moment before he nodded. No, I wouldn't. Do you think I should blame myself for Sirius' death? Of course not, you ridiculous boy. Then I don't see why you should keep blaming yourself for my parents. Look, we've lost so many but we're still alive, and we've only just started to get along after all these years. I know that Mum wouldn't want us fighting and blaming each other for the tragedy that happened. How is it possible? Severus whispered. How can you be this forgiving? Well, maybe despite what you've told me all these years, I'm my mother's son after all, Harry said with a small smile. And I would say I ought to have my eyes examined for never having seen such all these years. Severus met his gaze, finally letting a ghost of a smile find his lips. Severus regarded the boy beside him, so young and yet somehow so old despite his years. Forgiving, yes, but also wise. Severus's shoulders visibly relaxed. Suddenly, the years of guilt that had become an unbreakable solid mass in his chest started to soften and melt away. And at the same time, he felt a newfound commitment to not only protecting, but to supporting this boy any way he could. Whatever hopes and dreams Harry may have, Severus would be there to ensure he could achieve them. Hope you enjoyed it. We are nearing the end.